Okay, it's top of the hour at noon, so I'm going to go ahead and get started. I need to ask you a serious question. And if I asked most people this, how would you answer? Are you a good listener? Probably most people are going to say, oh, of course I'm a good listener. But I want you to rank yourself. How good of a listener are you? And in reality, how good of a listener are you? Be true to yourself right now. So I'm going to tell you, statistics say that very few of us are as good as we think. And we're not as good at effective and intentional listening as we'd all like to be. Over the next 30 minutes or so, I'm going to address what makes a good listener and how you can form habits to help you better connect with those that you interact with. My name is Jerry Ann Kelly, and I'm a Maxwell Leadership Certified Executive, and I own my own company, J.A. Kelly Consulting. I specialize in helping businesses grow and improve outcomes through the development of their people, which I refer to as intentional leadership development. Listening skills are 100% something that we all intentionally need to think about. When most people hear the word listen, they immediately imagine a mom telling their 2-year-old, you need to listen to me, you need to listen to me. Or perhaps a wife telling her husband, he just doesn't listen. That's what she tells her friends. Does that sound familiar? You know, we're going to talk about selective hearing in a second. When people who want to become better leaders hear the word listen, they often wonder, am I good at it? Am I good enough at it? So you leaders today, we're going to talk about that. Other people, when they hear the word listen, all they can think about are the folks that ramble on and on and on, and therefore they really are annoyed with listening. However, I want you to know how I see the word listen. I think of it as an important leadership skill that many leaders and my friends all above undervalue. Here's the bottom line for you. Becoming an effective leader will improve your relationships with your team, your customers, and your loved ones. Now, one of the reasons this is one of my favorite quotes is it's catching all parts of your life. And I think it's more fun to learn something that impacts not just work, but your personal life as well. That's super cool in my mind. The unfortunate and sad truth is that the average person listens only at about 25% efficiency. I'm really hoping that y'all are going to listen a little more than that today while we go through this content. However, many people listen at even less. So let me just tell you a quick story. When I started a book about 5 years ago, which was pretty much, right after I got married. I never really realized how poorly my husband was at hearing or listening until we started living together. He misunderstood me so many times that I thought, it used to make me laugh. And I thought, well, I'm going to write all these incidences down where it totally doesn't make sense. And maybe someday I can use them and write a comedy about it. Like the time that I have in my book that I have here. And I said to him, hey, can you turn off the microwave? Because it was doing that beepy thing, when you don't turn it off after you've had food in it. And I said, can you, turn off the microwave before you come into the living room? And he walks right by the microwave. And I'm like sitting there watching TV thinking, what did he just do? Now, me as a wife, I've got a choice to speak up. I asked you to turn off the microwave. Or I just let him sit down. And he sits down next to me. And he said, I didn't hear anything on the news today about a tidal wave. And of course, at that point, I was like, oh, my. I said, and we laughed. And I said, I didn't say tidal wave. I said microwave. That's where the book came from. There's also a few times more annoying than that and not as funny. When I ask open-ended questions like, what do you want for dinner? Or we've got chicken steak and, pot roast and something else. And I say, which do you want for dinner? And he looks right at me and goes, yes. And I'm thinking, and I almost always say at this point after, a few years of marriage, it was not a yes, no question. You have to answer it in a sentence. And then he'll look at me and go, what question? So, guys, I really hope I'm not alone in this. And actually, I know I'm not. Listening is such an important skill. And it can be very annoying when somebody doesn't listen to you. And my theory on that is we probably have never really considered listening as a skill that we needed to talk about and learn, which is kind of strange because the bottom line in life is we are very social creatures. We like being around people, let's face it. And listening is such a huge part of being social and impacting our lives with other people. So why isn't it been a priority? Think about it. When was the last time you went to a conference and you could have picked a session on listening? But here's the happy news today. You are actually here. You did pick this session, whether you're watching me live today, or perhaps you're just picking up the recording. Either way, something in you, probably as a leader, said, I think I'm going to learn a little bit more about listening. There's a study of managers' employees that work in very high stress jobs. And they found that statistics, and they looked at good leadership and poor leadership, and then the effect on listening. 40%, keep that number in mind, of the leaders that were more effective were also excellent listeners. They practiced listening on a regular basis. So what that says to me, it should say to you as well, is that I can be 40% more effective just by improving my listening skills. I hope that really shows you how important that is. Research also tells us that most conflicts in life, in work and in life, are a result of somebody not hearing things clearly. Just think about that. So I want you right now to take a minute and identify somebody in your life in the past or the present that you consider to be an excellent leader, someone that you learned leadership skills from, perhaps somebody in your social environment that you feel is always leading the project and does so in a way that you just really super admire that person. So have that person in mind. Then, now I want you to ask yourself a question. Were they good at listening? Were they able to restate what you said? Did they remember what you said the next week and bring it back up? I guarantee that person you just thought of as a great leader, awesome, was super good at having effective listening skills. So I'd like to share now some thoughts that I have regarding the word listen and listening as it pertains to your personal company results and as a person that deals with people every day. Effective listening is so many things. This is by no means not an exhaustive list. And I just wanted to put together some bullet points for you to actually read. But first of all, effective listening greatly improves both your personal and your professional relationships. We covered that, but it's well worth saying again, because I think it's so important. Effective listening allows you to collaborate more effectively with your team at work and other places. It's super important that we really listen to our team's ideas, their concerns, and their thoughts, and that we actually follow up on things. I've already noted how important it is that you become more effective, 40%, right? You can be more than the average or just slightly, or 40% more effective as a leader. And it really will improve your ability to connect and understand others. Next, mutual respect. It will demonstrate the concern you have for their well-being, which makes them realize you're committed to them and you really work at what they do. You care about what they do. And as I already stated, it does reduce chances of conflict. But more importantly than that, it not only reduces it, because conflict's going to happen, but what it will do, it's more likely to bring us to a win-win situation if we're really listening. So I want you to consider this. You're talking and you don't feel heard. And maybe, conflict starting to arise, which happens to all of us. And the more you talk, the more the individual you're talking to interrupts you, interjects their thoughts, because they're so much better. And it's opposing views. If you don't feel heard, what are most people likely to do? Well, I know for me, I'm going to dig in my heels and I'm probably going to raise my voice and I'm going to try to get my point across even louder and louder. And the more I do that, the more the person that I'm disagreeing with is going to do the same. And next thing you know, we're in a full-blown conflict. And that's not a win-win situation. When you feel heard, take that same situation and you're feeling heard. You're not going to raise the hairs on the back of your neck. You're not going to want to dig in because okay, well, they're hearing me. And that's a good thing. I feel like they're understanding my point because I just restated it. So, okay, I see their point now. And you know what? There's a way to compromise here. So all around, everybody feels better when they walk away from that conflict when you felt heard. Another thing effective listening does, when you're really thinking about it, I should say intentional listening does, it gives us a minute to pause and think before we speak. I've been hearing that my entire life. Jerry Ann, you really should think before you speak. Well, if you're intentional about your listening, you are going to take a breath and consider what you're about to say. So it gives you that idea to think before you think. Effective listening is actively absorbing information while showing the person that's speaking to you that you're really listening and you're engaged, and then providing them that feedback that shows them they've really been heard. In other words, what I'm saying is effective listeners show speakers they've been heard and understood. As I talked about before, we are all social creatures, right? And we thrive on relationships. So the best thing you can do for another person is show them that the communication is working and that what they've said, their message, is being delivered effectively. You got it, right? You understand. So let's jump on to the good stuff here. Why you're here. You came here to learn how to become more effective. Hopefully, I've at this point convinced you that it's an important skill. Number one, please put aside any distractions. Okay, that means turn off your phone, shut down your laptop. Well, the way I think of it is turn off anything that's going to beep at you. All right, because not only is that distracting for you, to like, oops, I'm going to read my, the person that's communicating with you, they're going to hear the beep too. And the first thing that's going to pop in their mind is potentially, are they going to listen to me, or are they looking down at their computer? This is especially important when you're on a Zoom meeting. And I'm going to talk about Zoom a couple different times, because if somebody looks down, and we're on a Zoom meeting, so you can tell, and I just look down and you've heard a beep, you're going to assume, oh, I've decided to read my email. So I've looked down and now I'm reading my email, and then I'm back up, turn the beepy things off, get rid of the distractions. Okay. Just remember how you would feel if somebody did that to you. And I guarantee it has happened before to all of us. Another point is to consider your presence, what is around you, your physical presence. So those of you that work in an office, I want to remind you of a simple fact. Get out from behind your desk. The desk represents a barrier between you and whomever's across the desk. So come out from behind your desk. Now, the ideal office situation, I'm sure not everybody can actually have it, like you don't have room. But ideally, in your office, you have your desk where you work, and then you have a separate place that you'll have two chairs and something a little more comfortable. And that represents a physical environment that's comfortable for connecting with others. So please get out from behind your desk, remove that barrier. If you don't have room in your office, which would be the case for me, if you could see my office, perhaps identify another room that's nearby that you can say, hey, let's get up and go to that other room. Now, you're not trying to scare them into going to another room or make them feel like, well, HR is going to show up. or something weird, you can always say, my office is a mess, too many distractions in here. Let's go sit down where we can really hear each other, or I can hear you. Another one about your physical appearance is crossing yourself off. So once you are facing each other, this action, I don't know, you guys can't really see me, but crossing your arms like that. Psychologists say that this crossing of your arms, and actually, I didn't really know this until a couple of years ago, and crossing your legs is a sign of defensiveness or awkwardness, neither of which do you want somebody that you're connecting with to feel. Because if you're feeling awkward, they're going to be thinking in their head, what am I saying that's making them so closed off and awkward? Or, the immediate sitting down with your arms like this, and I'm making a frowny face because I naturally, when I do this, I feel closed off. I mean, try it right now, folks. When you put your arms up and across your chest, I immediately feel like, I'm not an open person anymore. So please be careful of your arms and your legs, which I really didn't think about, but think about it. It is. So if you're looking to create an environment of openness, keep your arms and legs uncrossed and sit in plain view of your talking partner. So it goes without saying, we have tons of research about body language, and it's more important. Often people remember your body language more than they do your words. And there are statistics about that as well, which I could share if I had more time. So one other thing I want to mention, well, one of many others, I'm sorry, fidgeting. I actually looked up the definition of fidgeting. I was probably trying to figure out how to spell it, to be honest. I realized it is defined as feeling unimportant. In my opinion, that has to be the number one best way to let who you're talking to know that you don't care about what they're saying. If I'm fidgety, which I am a little bit all the time, so I have to be very careful of it because my high I personality, I'm always kind of moving around, right? So when I do that, even though I don't even know I'm doing it, I potentially could hurt that relationship and that conversation with that person because they could be interpreting that as impatience, which means I'm really done with what you have to say to me right now, and I'm trying to move on to my next task in my day. And so move on, hurry up and finish this conversation. I don't think you want anybody walking away feeling like that. One we often talk about is eye contact. And the only thing I can really say about that is have some, but please don't have too much. You do not want to freak out the person you're talking to and have this weird fixated gaze. I think, I would want to be like, hey, back up. You're in my physical space. You're staring at me. And that is really, really weird. The next one, I wish I never had to bring up, but it is the most common problem people have when they're trying to communicate with each other. And that's interrupting. Don't interrupt. And if you know that you tend to do that, it's okay to do this while you're talking, and you feel that sudden urge to like jump in that conversation. And we're going to talk about a bunch of different ways people jump in. Jot down what you want to say. All right, that will help your brain go, okay, it wasn't said out loud, but I got it down and I'm not going to forget it. Now, make sure when you're jotting notes down, you don't jot down notes so much that they're just looking at the top of your head, especially when you're on Zoom, because you remember all they can see is you. They don't really know what you're doing. It's good to let people know that is what you're doing, okay? That you are writing down notes. And that way, when you're that quick thinker and you got to chime in, you're not interrupting them, you're just writing them down. Another note on eye contact, especially when it comes to Zoom like we are today. So typically when you're on your computer camera, your camera is at the top of your screen. It's up here. Like, let's see if I can get the top of my screen. Okay, there's the top of your screen. And the person that you're talking to, well, depending on how you have your Zoom set up, they could be down here at the bottom of your screen. So I'm going to show you two things right now, okay? I'm looking at you. And this is like, I hope right now you feel like I'm only talking to you. I'm looking at you. Now, what if I was worried if I was trying to look at you on my screen. So this is where you guys are on my screen right now. So what if I was like this and I'm talking and yep, yeah, understand. Okay, so you see that difference? I'm looking at you now and I'm talking. Now, I'm sorry, I'm looking at the camera now and I'm conversing. But now I'm looking at you on the screen. And though I'm like actually listening to you because I'm looking at you, because your little picture is on the bottom of my screen, I'm not really looking at you. Same goes for if they're to the right or the left for some reason, like in a group. So right now I'm looking at you guys again. Now I'm going to look at somebody that's like sitting on my, with a whole bunch of Zooms like over here. Oh, Sally, that's a great point. Right? So I think I'm looking at Sally because her picture is there, but I'm really not looking at Sally. Sally doesn't feel looked at. So enough on that. I think you get the point. So Zoom is kind of tricky. We all got into the world of Zoom in 2020, but we still all need to get better at it. So at the end of that, what I'm trying to say is to be an effective listener, you must train yourself to stop interrupting and have good eye contact. Well, wow, we're going through things really fast. Although you may not intend to communicate anything I just said, your actions are going to speak louder than your words. It's just a fact of life. I want you to ask yourself right now another question. Have you ever left a conversation feeling more confused and lost than you did when you came in? So you came in to see somebody and you had a plan and maybe you needed their help. And when you left, you were like, I don't even know what just happened. That's usually what happens to the person that gets interrupted a lot, because the person that's interrupting spends so much time interrupting, you start to lose your train of thought. And then pretty soon, I can't even remember why I went to see you to begin with. That's very confusing. So when you do that, when next time you are in somebody's office or wherever you are with them, and you walk away feeling confused, consider how many times they interrupted you, and then remember that so that you don't do that same thing again. Next hint. While the person is talking, I'd like for you to consider, I am looking at my screen now. Consider visually thinking about what they're saying. I want you to paint a mental picture in your mind. That's going to help you stay focused. And even more importantly, or as importantly, it's going to help you remember what they have said to you. So it's kind of it's a win-win there, right? You're going to stay focused in the conversation. You're going to make them feel really, really connected to you. And at the same time, it's going to help you remember what they said. So as they're telling that story, you might only just need to pick up certain words and just pop them in your brain and remember those phrases. Your brain will do the rest of the work. When you have a visual look on it, in your mind, your brain will remember it. And if you start to wander, bring yourself back. A little bit about employees and employee engagement. It's a huge thing today that all companies, in my opinion, should be doing some type of engagement survey. How engaged are their employees? A very large part of all of those surveys, I promise, is how well someone feels heard and whether or not their ideas and thoughts are taken into consideration. So this visualization that we're talking about and all the things related to listening helps employees be heard. But the icing on the cake for somebody is when you go back about a week later and you can restate. Last Thursday, you were telling me about how you were really concerned about your dog. It's the only thing I can come up with right now. Your dog, and that he was going to go to the vet. How did that turn out? How special is it when somebody really paid enough attention to you to come back to you a week later and ask? Has a huge impact on engagement surveys from research. Now, I talked about the wandering mind. Okay. We all can wander. We have a lot going on. And I do want you to know that it's okay, to say, I'm sorry. Hang on. I got confused. Can you restate what you just said? I want to clarify that I heard you correctly. Or just repeat that last part. Okay, be careful how you say it. And please, if you're going to ask a question or you're going to restate and clarify, make sure you are in the realm of their conversation. Again, if we go back to the dog thing. So if they were talking about their daughter, don't ask them how Fluffy's doing. Okay, can you repeat that part about Fluffy? No. Please be in the moment enough to know the topic before you ask for a clarifying question, which is another one of the ways to really help people listen or know that you're listening to them, is clarifying questions. Before I go there, what about all those times we feel like we need to give advice? We have the solution. They came to you. They're going on and on about their problems. And, oh, you know what? You could make this conversation about 15 minutes shorter if you just give them your thoughts and give them the solution. That would be great, but that's not always what people want. Matter of fact, it's probably the lesser amount of time. Sometimes people just come to talk to you to talk to you. They come to vent, and they don't want a solution. They're just venting. Now, if you think that possibly they might want your opinion, ask them before you throw it out there, please. Say, would you like to hear my thoughts? Or I have an idea. Do you want me to share it? And you know what? They'll tell you, no, nope, I'm good. Let's just move, So you might need to clarify that. And we're going to talk about when a conversation is about to happen, like, things you can do beforehand. Effective listening also means listening without judgment. Now, we get things caught up in our head, and they may be caught up in our head before we even, get into the conversation, because we know the person. And that's going to come out. It's going to come out a couple different ways. One of the ways is in your body language or your facial expressions. Oh my Lord, is she going on and on again? And now I'm saying that out loud, but sometimes that can be in our head and we're not saying it. I didn't say a word, but I was thinking the same thing. Oh Lord, she's going to go on and on. So be careful that the negative things that are in your head, okay, that self-talk up there is not going to come out in an expression of some way. The other way you need to be careful when you're asking questions or trying to just make sure, clarify, make them feel heard through asking questions, how you ask the questions and what you ask. Now, if somebody says to me, why did you do that? Now, that's not a question that makes me think they're really hearing me. Now, they may have heard me, like physically heard me, but they're not hearing my feelings, because that just made me feel horrible. Or another one you can hear sometimes is, what were you thinking? What would make you think that? Or an extreme, are you crazy? All right, so these are questions. These are clarifying questions. It's not an interrogation, and it's not to allow my judgmental thoughts in my head. I could be thinking all that, but don't let what you're thinking come out of your unfiltered mouth. Okay, filter. Actually, don't filter it. Just close it. Don't say it. The best journalists, interviewers, and researchers learned that the importance of probing early on is really, really important. Probing does a lot of things. Okay, it will also not only let the person know you actually care about what they're saying, but it will also help you get to the bottom of what the problem may be, as long as you're doing it in a non-judgmental way. So you probably need to ask some questions, especially if an employee comes in, let's say, talking about a peer or another problem going on in the office. It's very likely you're going to need to ask a question. So just be careful that what you're thinking in your head does not come out of your mouth exactly that same way, and that you tailor your probing questions. It is not an interrogation. The ones that crack me up sometimes, and I do this to my husband a lot, quite frankly. is what I like to call a sentence grabber or a sentence ender. So often when somebody's talking and you're kind of like, and maybe it's a friend and you know the story and they're talking to somebody else and you finish it. It goes through your mind, you know the end of the story. So before that person can get there, you're finishing it for them. Folks, that's the same as interrupting. Okay? Don't interrupt the person. Let them tell their story the way they want to. It's their story. Just because you can think of a better ending does not mean you get to interrupt them. Similar to that are those people that one up you. And this probably occurs more than in social situations. I guess it occurs at work too. But when you're at a party and you're all proud of your grandbaby, like I am a proud grandmother. And I'm telling a story about Kennedy and how great she played at soccer. And I get my story out, and then there's somebody else from the neighborhood. Oh, that's nothing. My granddaughter does this and this and this during the soccer games. And she also played. And all of a sudden, my story, which was about me and my feelings about my granddaughter, all of a sudden became about them. Oh, it's horrible. You're in a circle of friends. Other people notice that. So don't be a one-upper. Be a conversational partner. Ask them questions. Listen. Remember, they were sharing their thoughts. In response, you don't need to share yours. It really will turn that person off. It is okay to share your experiences. I think the reason that maybe not in that extreme situation, but often we want to share our experiences because we don't want them to feel alone. Now that's a caring, honest feeling, right? When they're telling a story and you've had something very similar happen to you and you think it will help, right? To share your story with them as well. Though that's a caring moment and it's easy, very, very easy to see how that can help somebody. Be careful with how you do that. Make sure they're done and let them know, I really, really heard you. I had something similar happen, may or may not help you. Would you be interested if I shared? That's all. Just ask them. Now, for those of you that are already in the heat of the moment, right? And you've already jumped out there and, said, oh, something's, you already did it. If you catch yourself, whoop, zip it. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to get us off track. This is really more important. I want to hear your story. And if mine's, helps out later, we'll talk about it then. But let's get back to you. So, okay, folks, we're going to make mistakes. Remember, being real, being yourself, being your true self, even when you make mistakes, is important too. So a little note on a planned conversation. Sometimes we know we're going to have a conversation. Somebody said, hey, can I come see you in your office later today? Or can I come over? I really need to talk about a couple things. And this is maybe not somebody that, you like to listen to. Maybe they ramble. Maybe, it's going to be a 30-minute conversation. So clear your mind. Think about putting all of your opinions in the back of your head. Start that conversation with an open mind. Oops, apologize, got ahead of myself. Start that conversation with an open mind, okay? And plan on listening intentionally. So before you get into that conversation, before you walk into that office to meet that person, be sure you've got intentionality sitting right there. It also helps me, anyway, to take a couple minutes and do deep breaths, almost like I'm meditating into being the best listener and the most supportive boss, friend, peer that I possibly can be. Because our preconceived ideas about that person or the topic even, they're going to come through no matter how hard you try to hide them. Clear your mind, get straight. Now, sometimes pre-planned conversations, you don't know what the topic is. People just, say, hey, can I come chat? You don't know why. I want you to know that it's okay to ask that. So let me know, when you're together, ask them let me know what our topic is today, or how can I help you today? And get some clarifying ahead of time so that you're not, behind the eight ball. I like to say too, as an active listener, our ultimate goal is to get as much information as we possibly can in a time efficient manner and leave that conversation on better terms with a clearer vision, a shared vision of them, perhaps, than you started with. Another quote of mine that I appreciate and I think about a lot because it used to happen to me a lot is, if you're not listening, you may miss out on getting to know someone awesome that has spectacular stories to share with you. I've walked away before from conversations and the person was absolutely amazing. And then in retrospect, I realized, I sort of walked away too soon. As soon as they finished that story, I was, on be bopping around to the next person, and I should have hung out. I potentially could have missed something super cool, like another wonderful, wonderful story that they had to tell me. So just consider that quote at the bottom there. So to recap a little bit, remember to set your environment for a comfortable conversation. That includes the physical area, your body language, your tone, your eye contact. Be mindful of the way you react to phrases and ideas, especially those that might not agree, that you don't agree with. Watch your body language, including those facial expressions. Maintain nice eye contact, but don't freak them out and stare at them. And remember how to ask questions, how to probe without sounding like you're an interrogator. Nobody wants that. You want to be asking questions to have the person speaking to you share more. And most of all those interrupting topics, giving unsolicited advice, being a sentence finisher, being a one-upper, all those things are interrupters. And you always come out feeling the same way each time it happens. And it's never a good way to feel. So I've included some information about myself on this slide. And should you need to reach out, and maybe perhaps you want to do this presentation in person with a group in your office, my info is up there. I'd love to hear from you. And I hope I've added value to you today. And I really hope you have a fantastic rest of the day and have a great weekend if you're watching this live. My name is Jerry Ann Kelly, and I love to intentionally develop others. Thank you for your time today.